Hello, audience. We're back for our second half of our show, which is on edible flowers, and now we're going to have our section on market to market to market to yum yum edible flowers we're having. My guest on this hour is Butch Dougherty. He's with Iovine Brothers.
You got it right.
I think of hi, Butch.
Hey, how are you?
I am fine, and thank you very much for being on the show. And audience, this is the first time Butch and I have a chance to talk, because when we were getting everything coordinated, we were tracking down everybody. So I appreciate it very much.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thanks for inviting us.
Yes, and when I see the spelling of the Iovine Brothers, Iovine, I think of iodine without the D in it. So that's how I have to stop and think about it. And audience, Butch is the operations manager for Iovine Brothers, which is nestled in a market of 3,000 square feet in the Reading railroad station in the Philadelphia area, correct?
It is. We operate a produce market within what's called the Reading Terminal Market. It's actually a pretty historic landmark in Philadelphia, and the market itself takes up 1 square block. It's a historic building that over 100 years ago was a train station that brought farmers from Lancaster and other parts of the country, or other parts of the state, rather, to Philadelphia. It's no longer a train station, but it now does house over 80 unique merchants that are everything from produce purveyors to fishmongers to prepared foods. And yes, it's really a unique place.
And some of our audience will remember it as one of the little squares on the game Monopoly,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It's there. It really does exist. That game brought out a lot of historical places, and Philadelphia is so full of history, from Benjamin Franklin forward and our forefathers, et cetera. And I know your area of that terminal is a high tourist attraction, and in particular, with your business, which is the Iovine business of produce, in particular, you specialize in edible flowers along with other produce.
And we do. We actually have we try to market ourselves as a full service market, which means that throughout the year you'll be able to find an abundance of local produce, and you'll be able to find some of the more exotic produce from other parts of the world where we specialize in items that you wouldn't find at your normal markets. Items such as dragon fruit or canepas and edible flowers does fall into that category of items that most likely you wouldn't find at your typical supermarket or even your typical farmer's market. So It really is a combination, and edible flowers is an item that we do carry.
And I tell you, like when you mentioned Canepa, our company, Integrative Health Systems, was the first to use Canepa in our Canary Island blend, which helps the throat so much. But Canepas are native in the Puerto Rican area, Puerto Rico, and the Caribbean, and they're a wonderful fruit. And you just suck on that little seed and then spit it out. It's
absolutely
very good. It's like a Caribbean loquat. It's really good. And the other fruit that you mentioned, the dragon fruit, that is very hard to find, meaning I'm so glad you specialize in that, because you slice it, you can dry it, and it is so beneficial in nutrients for the body as compared to any of the others, because it's so compressed with vitamin C and other types of nutrients in it. And then any of these fruits or even these edible flowers, audience, it is so important to realize that you don't need, like on our first half, you don't need to eat a lot of them, but it makes it special, the right of food and the right of the edible flower right when you have
Absolutely.
them. Because they're so potent because of the dyes and the enzymes in it. Because people don't realize it needs more enzymes and more energy and more growth factor or more longevity of the cells to make a flower bloom than it is to make it grow, the plant, sometimes. So nature has really played an important role in the design of plants and also the flowers. And I know it was Nancy who interviewed you for our promo, Butch. You mentioned, which is one of the test questions if they want to win a prize from us on our new Botulinum nasturtium gel, is your number one selling edible flower is what, Butch?
I'd say our number one edible flower are orchids.
Yes. And
or
in
edible
particular,
orchids.
yeah, with that orchid, because when I see an orchid in my mind, or I've seen them, I have orchids in the office, and are they the little ones? Are they the big ones? What is being bought for food?
Right, and you touched on something which was very profound, which is just the immense intelligence of nature, where that the food that grows and the plants that grow have such healing capabilities, and in our case, in many cases, the edible flowers that are being bought just because how eye-striking and how beautiful they are. Yes, they're edible, so that they're safe to put on a plate. But we have many caterers that will come in, and our orchids that we sell are probably about the size of your index finger in length, and they're predominantly used for decoration on dishes that they make, and it's just an added bonus that they're edible and that they're safe. But the color is just what's so striking about them.
Right. They're drawn by the colors, and I personally, if you ever look at the center of an orchid, it looks just like a person bowing, in particular like a woman in a kimono, like a Chinese gate, bowing and having their hands open, like cupped, and it just, to me, looks so profound that way. It's like the reverence of that orchid in you. It's a flower that is you and the flower, versus the other flowers out there don't have that. It's because it's like that flower is looking at you. So it's very interesting. And the thing with a lot of your produce, in particular, too, which I have a recipe which we call monkey juice, and then I made it into a product, and it's on the website, where we use celery, cilantro, honey, and prickly pear. And you're among the leader in bringing out prickly pear as an exotic food. It's well known here in Southern California with our having our heritage from Spanish and Mexico and everything along that line. And it was a common food for dessert. And you can take that cactus, peel that. Be careful, because sometimes there is a little thorn, or needle, and peel that. Get to the raw fruit, dice it up if you want. And you can even put it on top of yogurts or vanilla pudding or anything. Drizzle some honey or agave nectar, and it is just yum. And it's so wonderful that way. And what we do is I take that one prickly pear to a whole blender of water and celery, cilantro, and a little cayenne and some honey. Blend that, as I say, the heck out of it. Strain it, and then pour that juice over ice, and I'm telling you, your lungs breathe after you drink that. It's amazing how it detoxes the lungs and just feels wonderful, but very refreshing in these hot summer days.
Absolutely. They do contain we have a lot of customers that come through. We're on the East Coast, so a lot of the fruit that we have that might be more common on the West Coast, or definitely down south towards Mexico, is not as common, and does get a lot of comments and questions from our consumers. And the one way I always describe the prickly pear is make sure you have a paper towel close by, because they really are just so packed with juice.
Yes, they are very packed and very nutritious. And a lot of these types of foods, whether they're the flower or like the prickly pear or the acai berry and that, they're just starting to come into their own heritage, I'm going to say, as a fruit and as a flower, in their own reign, in reference to what chemicals are in them, what beneficial nutrients are in them, how does it help with the nervous system. Some of these materials, like even the nasturtium, which is wonderful. It has cataplasma in it, which allows cells to regenerate and heal over, so that if you have burns or cuts or anything, it stops bleeding, etc. So these are all other areas that maybe our grandparents or older generations may have known, but because of our civilizations going into cities and that, we're starting to lose that tradition or that knowledge. And it's so refreshing having your company so active in producing, because your company not only grows for the public out there, supplies the produce and edible flowers, but it also supplies to among 10 of the top Philadelphia restaurants that specialize in serving edible flowers, which that's a lot of flowers when you start adding it up. For just the local community, to supply and to bring in.
Absolutely. Well, we have a really good vendor that we deal with, John Vina Incorporated, and they really are just a fantastic resource for supplying us as well with all the items that would be very uncommon and hard to get on the East Coast. Everything that we've mentioned before, everything from dragon fruit to currants to longans and just a litany of other items that only a specialty dealer would be able to find.
Right, and tell our audience, because with edible flowers, by the time you get it from the grower to you, the market, to the public, the one who's buying it, or the chefs or anything, you have hours or days, because flowers only live so long.
No, absolutely. You're really dealing with a very short shelf life, which is one of the difficulties with edible flowers, is that when you think about the grower and the shipper and it going to a distributor, and then when you come to a retailer to find it to the person that's purchasing, I mean, one little delay in any of that chain, and that poor flower doesn't have much chance to survive, or at least to look pretty when you purchase it. So you're really only looking at a couple days. Most of the time when you purchase, we tell our customers to really plan on using them within 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes items such as a squash blossom, you're even dealing with a little bit of less time. So they really are something that you have to have someone that's reliable that you're getting them from, and that you're getting them as fresh as possible, because you're exactly right, Dr. Hildy. That there isn't a long shelf life for them.
Right, and with some of these short shelf life, it's the breakdown of the flower themselves, or that aspect of that plant, which gives different chemicals and thus different flavors that can be irritating to the body if they're not added in the right amount of time. At the same time, as with any type of decaying material, you have the chance of having more mold or more bacteria in these. But in your particular plants, because they're edible in that, I feel, and you can share it with the audience, that they're more of an organic or more reduced pesticide or no pesticide type application, because they are being eaten rather.
No, absolutely. There's a big difference between like the rose petals that you would maybe get from your florist and the rose petals that you're going to sprinkle into your salad, and chemicals and pesticides that will keep roses looking beautiful aren't the same ones that you want to digest. So you're exactly right. So that you're dealing with a product that is more delicate. And when you think, what other word comes to mind when you think of the word flower than the word delicate? So you're absolutely right. You're looking at a short shelf life. You're looking at a product that is pretty delicate on its own.
Yeah. Now, with I know you supply the public and the restaurants and other other markets within your network. Do you have any clientele that like our audience or anything that could be that they could contact your Iovine Brothers and have it overnighted to them if they wanted? Because it's hard in some grocery stores out here. There's only 2, Ralph's and Whole Foods, that carry little packages of edible flowers.
Exactly.
But it would be a nice market if you were able in the future, if not now, be able to furnish that, like a select bouquet of edible flowers, that if they could be overnighted and looking at different technology to keep it fresh.
And it is a possibility. I would tell anyone that is interested, they can absolutely contact us, www.iovine, that's IOVINE.com. They can contact us through the website. It'll come right to me. And then also, if they're interested, John Vena, that's spelled VENA Incorporated. Now, they're an East Coast-based company, but they're definitely worth reaching out to. They're one of the premier specialty companies. And although it isn't something that we do now, we do consider ourselves more of a retailer and a local wholesaler of all of our products, including edible flowers. It is something that if your audience had questions, we'd at least like to try to help point them in the right direction.
Right. And because I know once they have a chance to look at the website and see the different recipes, as I stated earlier on the show with Aaron Stiles from Ryman Gardens, that it is so nice to use edible flowers in decorating whatever you're making at home or creating little beyond watercress sandwiches. It is so nice, especially with children, because you can use soft cheeses, you can use different types of jellies and that, and make it pretty, and it's something that they can prepare as learning something, too, from Mom and Dad. So it's nice that way, especially for summer activities. I think there should be little classes of edible flower class or cooking school, because it's so important now to teach a lot of younger people traits they don't even know, Oh,
no, absolutely. And I mean, there's little ways that you can, like in a good way, you could trick your kids into eating healthier, or at least having a positive attitude towards produce. I know that there's one of our clients, what they do is that they'll freeze small edible, like little pansies in ice cubes so that they're able to put them in drink. And
that
it's just
is beautiful.
Yeah, so you think of if you think of a clear drink, and then you think of the ice cube that's floating in there with the color of the flower that's bursting through. And it's little things like that I think that not only look great in a catering or like a wedding environment, but also kids really like that. Like you have to make nutrition, and you have to make it fun, because if it's not fun, no one's going to want to do it.
That's it, Butch. You do have to make it fun, because if it's not fun, they won't learn, and then they won't do. And it's very important to keep it fun. Of the edible flowers that you keep in stock, what are your primary ones outside of the orchids? What do you see the trends?
Carnations. There's many distributors will also have like a mixed pack of pansies, so that you'll have small pansies in multiple colors. Rose petals are very popular, and I don't know if it's we consider it less of an edible flower and more of just a specialty item, which are squash blossoms, which are always very popular.
Yes, especially if you're in a community where there's an Italian base, Italian-American base, because there's recipes where they use with anchovies and stuffing the squash and batter and frying it, and even just eating and making it. It's a very tasty dish, very tasty.
Oh,
dish.
Absolutely. And you just seen such a burst of energy into the whole food industry, whether it's cooking, whether it's preparing. I mean, how many networks are there that just cover cooking? So there's so many people that are interested in everything that has to do with food. And when you combine the fact that many major cities have a very competitive market where not only are chefs, but even foodies and caterers are really trying to outdo each other and just really be creative. And I think edible flowers allow that twist. When most people hear the word flower, they don't think of eating the flower. But if you say vegetable, they do think of it. And so to be able to bring something like a flower that does look beautiful and then also still introduce it into the realm of something that you can eat is very appealing, I believe.
Yes, it is very. And with catering, do they do it? Have you seen with catering? Is it more weddings versus like baby showers or any of those type things where the flowers would be used?
It's really everything. That if we're very lucky with the city that we're in Philadelphia, because it's really a litany of things. It is like weddings and baby showers, but it's also, think of companies that are having corporate events, and you have personal chefs that are cooking for any number of families for anything from birthdays to special occasions, and they're looking for ways to keep their dishes looking and tasting original. So it could be anything from small personal chef parties to events, to big events like a wedding or a corporate event, and it's really as diverse as I guess you could say that their uses are as diverse as the flowers themselves.
Mhm. Because do you do anything with yucca blossoms or anything like that? Versus there's the yucca plant where they they use the root and they cook that.
Oh yeah, and it's we sell the root, but not the flower. So
yeah.
it probably would be something that we could try to get our hands on, but it hasn't presented itself to be as popular that we have people asking for it.
Yeah, the root is very tasty, especially if they make it with garlic and everything. It's like even breadfruit. You experience it in the islands, being the Caribbean islands. It's a wonderful dish with olive oil and garlic drizzled over it. It's you boil it like a potato. It's delicious.
Yeah, and it's I'll tell you, Dr. Hilda, you should come out to Philadelphia. You're naming all the exotic fruits that we love.
I think I will. I'll be cutting a deal with y'all. With I think we're going to have fun, Butch.
I had the pleasure of having one of the gentlemen that works in the Reading terminal is from St. Vincent, the island of St. Vincent, and so when we had breadfruit, his eyes lit up, and he threw some in an oven for us, and I was amazed at how much it did taste like a potato-style bread that is typically very filling and is used with is cooked with salty fish on the islands. So you're right. Yeah, it's good to see someone that is so diverse with the fruit and vegetables that they know. Yeah.
Well, I traveled in my younger days, and I got to experience the food because I love food. So, I enjoyed those foods. It's like the canepa. I used to have the greatest fear that little seed was going to get stuck in my throat, but it was a delicious fruit. Delicious fruit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And with the edible flowers, meaning when they come into, are your suppliers more local growers, or like I know you use the distribution through John Vina, but do you get them? Like nasturtiums are easy to grow. Meaning I don't know if they would be locally or something like that. But even in your foods, you had, which was interesting, the fermented black garlic. Which I was, I worked with Korean companies for a long time, and I remember when they came up with that because they were looking at it because it was so good with kimchi, and that because of anyone who ate the kimchi, they found that they didn't get SARS when it came out. The respiratory illness in the Asian communities, when you had to travel to Asia and stuff like that. And so I know that a lot of healthcare providers that were looking at different fermented foods, especially ones that were looking at whole foods, so that Korean black fermented garlic was very, very popular in dishes and in a lot of aspects. And it's refreshing to see that y'all carry it. You're the leaders in carrying that, too.
And we do carry it. In fact, we expect another shipment in tomorrow. There's not many.
You bring it in from Korea?
We have a vendor that we go through that does bring it through Korea.
Amazing.
And I believe there's also some California-based companies that are also distributing throughout the United States because it became so popular that they brought that that fermenting process from Korea and then we're processing it throughout the United States.
Utilize it, yes, because I know different fruits from Korea, like their grapes and everything. It's a different thing. I will share a little story on exotic fruit. There was I went with Sunny Young, who is the president of MPS Global, and we we're interviewing Cheetah from the Tarzan movies, the original one. He's now like 75 or 76 years old, and we brought him a case of Korean melons. He sat at a table with his diet soda, that's his only vice, okay, and a bag of Doritos and a Korean melon, and he had not one drop, not one crumb on the floor or anything. I was so impressed. And he is the oldest living chimpanzee in captivity. He has outlived even the natives. Jane Goodall, everybody has written. He's been in National Geographic, etc.
Oh my goodness!
And Hollywood needs to give him a star. Rin Tin Tin and Toto have a star. Why doesn't Cheetah? You know?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
but I tell you, he loved those Korean melons, and it was amazing. He was like. He was over 4 feet tall. It was amazing, and his daughter was 50 years old. So it was an interesting time because we wanted him to be our spokesperson and have different people pop out of the capsule Dima because he was the oldest. He knew he moved to Palm Springs for far infrared, but. He loved those Korean melons. So I know with the dragon fruit and all this exotic types of fruits that you have, it must be very popular with your, your clientele base there.
And it does. We have a very diverse clientele. I mean, we have people from all over the world. And one thing that really unites people is food. And we have found that there's another thing, that there's nothing that makes you feel more at home when you're far from home than seeing something you're familiar with. So people from the islands that see breadfruit, like you could just tell from the smile that like it's not so much the breadfruit in Philadelphia that they're having that they really need so badly, but it reminds them of what it was like when they were home. Whether it's whether it's food from Mexico and it's people that are here that are Mexican that are eating it. There's a part of comfort with food, and especially when you can get the food when you're far from home. That you remember, it just brings it back again.
It is. It brings those good memories. It brings the comfort of home within your heart, and it's so nice that your company is able to do that and has grown with it. And what is the history of the Iovine Brothers? Meaning, I know they're brothers. But were they always in produce? Were you always in produce, Butch? What were you?
No, you know what? They come from the Iovine Brothers. Their names are Vincent and James, and everyone calls them Vinny and Jimmy. They're two of 10 brothers and sisters that are born and raised in Philadelphia. They were not always in produce, but in 1994 they had the opportunity to begin to manage a produce market in the Reading Terminal. But at the time, the Reading Terminal was not the land market it was now. There were some problems with the neighborhood. The building itself needed renovations. And they were just two very hardworking men that built a very strong business based off of really just one priority, which was just to make it a great experience for their shoppers. So since then, their business has flourished. The market itself is doing great. The area around the Reading Terminal in downtown Philadelphia is doing fantastic, and it's had a huge rebirth. And many of the fruit that we've talked about today, those exotic fruits, were requests of a customer that came through. Hey, do you ever find dragon fruit? And rather than Vinny and Jimmy saying that's not something they were familiar with, what they did was they took the opposite approach, which was how can we learn, and let's see if we can find it. And then over the years, they've become experts on so many fruits and vegetables, mainly because they were open-minded enough to try to give the customers what they were asking for. Now those exotic fruits give us a point of difference to other merchants in Philadelphia. We're known as the place that has the great tomatoes and potatoes and the standards, but also has that beautiful looking dragon fruit, or that they have water coconuts throughout the year, or that we have these items that as tourists walk through that just catches their eye, and it's easy to see that we're different from the normal produce market that you may be going to.
Right, because the brothers, Jimmy and Vinny, they listened to their clientele that they found a way to bring it for them, to them.
Oh,
rather.
Absolutely.
And
their intention. Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say their number one intention was to have a place where people could find great produce at great prices and find what they were looking for, rather than just saying no or giving up on trying to find something. Like, let's see if we can find a vendor. Let's see if we can find a farmer that has it. And your customers always appreciate that. They know that you care. And they're going to be a little more loyal, too, because this is the place that they feel like they've helped contribute to.
Right. It's like the birth of coconut water, meaning you used to only see in the islands, meaning Puerto Rico, St. Vincent, Tortuga, any of those islands down there. And also then you would see it in Miami and in certain areas of the Tampa area because, hey, the pirates used to come into those areas and bring it forward. But I'm talking hundreds of years ago. But the thing is that now, which back then the people that used the coconut water, they used to always say, hey, just drink it. It's very good for you. It's good for your kidneys, etc. This way, it's got so much potassium, so much good stuff in it. Now there's commercial avenues that are even trying to put it in the bottles and the cans, etc. this way. And sometimes in those situations, meaning canned and preserved or any of that, it has other compounds or other substances in it that might not be as truly beneficial or as truly pure as what the original juice was, meaning the coconut water. And so when you're able to get like fresh coconuts and prepare dishes with it or use that water, and even in Thai communities they use the coconut water and make sticky rice and serve it in the coconut. And the tradition is to peel the coconut off and drink that water. It's like a little cocktail before, and it's nice. It's non-alcoholic, and you just have fun with it. It's a nice, sweet taste and very healing to the body. It's like Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say you're exactly right. We have many customers that will come in that are interested in the coconut, but not necessarily the water. And so that's just an added bonus for us, that they're fine with us just cutting open the coconut. They want to see the inside of it, and then the water is so refreshing, and it is full of potassium. And you're exactly right. It's very nourishing on a hot day. And you are right. It's the closest you can get to getting something from its like original source, how it was intended to be grown, is really just the healthiest option.
Right. And I see you could easily with your staff that maybe make or have your clientele send in recipes of the different fruits and vegetables that you use, especially these exotic and the edible flowers. And I could see an Iovine cookbook. Showing how it got here to Philadelphia, and it came all the way from the island of St. Vincent, or it came from South Africa, or anything. This is how this produce got to market, like this little piggy went to market, Absolutely. It'd be fun. I could see a lot of activity that way, and it'd be very beneficial. I know you've had many famous people, even outside of ourselves, coming to your market recently because of edible flowers. I know Nancy, who interviewed you for our promo, shared with me that even President Obama came to your area.
He did. He did come to our area.
That's nice.
He did look at produce. Although I will admit though that his food of choice for the day was a Philadelphia cheesesteak.
Oh well,
but that may have been.
That.
What's that?
Nothing can beat that once you've had a Philly steak.
Yeah. It may have been more for the photo op than anything else, but it was an exciting moment for him to stop by.
Yeah, I tell you, they all try to copy those Philly steaks, but the best is to have them in Philadelphia. It's like the roast-air chicken up in that area. It was very popular. I used to live in Philadelphia years ago, and up in the Valley Forge area. And the thing is, I was first introduced to those roast-air chickens, and now you see them everywhere. but
absolutely.
I think it's interesting that way. Outside of the orchids and your carnations and that, do they ever make like a soup or a blend, or do you know any recipes, Butch? I know I put some recipes on our site, and we're going to link to your site. But Have any of these chefs that use the flowers ever shared any recipe or anything with you?
I'm actually at a loss for recipes that they may have had. I know that some of them have talked about brewing some into teas and obviously sprinkling throughout salads. That's the majority of what I have seen, apart from stuffing of the squash blossoms.
Yeah, because they are very, very good. And even, audience, you could cut up cheddar cheese or Haverty cheese or any type of sliceable cheese and put one of a baby violet or a pansy, one of the smaller flowers on it, and it would just make it so decorative, just like your ice cubes with the pansies in it or the violets in it that you shared, that one of your customers do. I've even taken cherry tomatoes and put soft cheese and then put marigold petals on it, made it look like a little turkey, But you can be very exotic. I've always loved when they have vegetable carving, where you can carve it into something, or carve it into like an animal or any of those, with fruits and vegetables and squashes and everything. And I was very famous for taking a watermelon, long one, and making it with the fruit into a Viking ship and putting sparklers on it. So they're fun at different parties or summertime events. Like the 4th of July or end of summer meetings or anything like that. It's fun. It's different. It helps. Give you a special time between your children or your adults, and it makes who you care about when you do these salads or, like you said, putting the pansies inside the ice cubes. It makes that person feel special, and that's very nice, especially if that person is grown and appreciates the other person of doing that, especially when it's in the home. It's
absolutely. You think of some of the best times you have are probably at the kitchen table or around the kitchen or around food. So I think that's universal throughout the world.
That is it. That's where you know it when everything is going on. What's going on in the family, what's going on in the community, et cetera, is in those events when you're around that table. And also at the holiday time. Now, in reference to holidays, have you seen a trend with edible flowers, meaning do people buy more at Halloween time versus at Christmas time, or?
I think in our experience, it's been more New Year's. New Year's is it's more of a time where when people are making like holiday dishes, they're making it more with like a party flair. And that's and Christmas, I would say Christmas probably as well. Although there's many like traditional Christmas dinners that might not include the edible flowers, but definitely between that Christmas and especially New Year's, that's when a lot of the specialty items like white asparagus and then items that we might not sell a lot of during the whole year. That's when they're looking for them. Another time would be in the spring. That we do see some people that will come in looking for more around Easter as well. I think with everything with spring and blooming, that flowers are used as that time as well. But to answer your question directly, I'd say New Year's Eve is the biggest, with Christmas following with the second.
Yeah, and I'll tell you with nasturtiums, the pansies, borage, or even some of those like radish flowers, before you go into radishes or any of those, because it's a little sweeter than a radish in tasting, which is related to the beet. The thing is that you could be very creative with deviled eggs or any other dishes that you like in your house or on your plate, that you could just add these flowers and add other types of fruits with them, and it would be so pretty and so tasty for anyone who's participating in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On your edible flowers, outside of the ones that we've mentioned, do you also, because you're a large produce, do you also have boxed, I'm going to call it the herbs, where they may have the flowers like the chives, the onions, the I know you have daylilies. Do you get into the exotic flowers, like for outside of the orchids, like the fuchsia, the gardenias, any of those type?
No, we really don't. We do have. Like you had mentioned the chives. Like we have chives, but not the chive flowers. We have a whole line of herbs that people
like
come in
mint,
like fresh herbs,
thyme, etc. This way, and see,
absolutely.
and our audience, those are picked as herbs, which are going into culinary arts of cooking and making stews and soups and sauces and everything along that line. So the ones who harvest the herb not necessarily save the flower because they're letting it go into, so that then those flowers are used for seed in the production of their next crop, I would assume. The other one that's always very interesting is with any of this type of thing. Do you see a lot of in your area, like the use of impatiens? Because they're a very succulent. They're very soft stem, everything that way. They're like a watery stem.
And they may be. It just may not be a flower that we carry.
Yeah, well,
that people have asked us for.
Yeah, they might have it in like in a southern area versus the other, because I've grown them as a flower in like under trees and stuff like that, because they like to be in the shade. But I never even realized until I was getting ready for this show and really concentrating in the last several months in edible flowers that you could eat an impatient. I was very surprised, and it's like the Arabian jasmine. I love the smell of it, that beautiful nosegay cluster. At the same time, I've always had it in jasmine pearl tea or any of those types of teas, because I just prefer that. And they've done so much work in reference to looking at lung cancer and people who drink jasmine tea, that they have a reduced amount of lung cancer. And it was done in the, not Philadelphia Hospital, the Thomas Jefferson University. A study was done, right in your backyard. But,
oh, absolutely, yeah, 2 blocks away.
Yeah, and so I've always seen it as a tea in that. I didn't even realize you could eat, outside of just brewing the tea, eat the flower. I always thought that was interesting. And I've known hibiscus and that. Do y'all sell hibiscuses? Or
No, we do not.
No, because it's like you said, with the 1 to 2 day, lifespan, so you get it fresh to market, because it's overnighted to y'all, fresh to market, get it to those clients that need it. They can break down real fast, hibiscus, because they close, within 24 hours, their bud and everything. And they use that in hibiscus tea, especially in Hawaii. And I'm curious, where does dragon fruit come from? Africa? I don't know.
No, dragon fruit, you can get it in Mexico. You can also get it throughout Asia, Indonesia. From what I understand, it's like the flower that's growing off of like a vine in the plant, and so and that's so. I believe that we get ours from overseas. I believe they're probably getting them from Asia, and then we do get some that are also from Mexico.
Right, and audience, if you ever do see a dragon fruit, if you use your imagination and a quick look, it sort of does look like a head of a dragon, So it's amazing how you get names of different fruits or flowers, and it has an image there of whatever the name is. So it's quite interesting that way. And what is new within your business, Butch, of what you have done? Because I know we may have some audience calling you to deliver edible flowers overnight, and that might be an extension of your business. But what do you see in the horizon? Because that area has grown so much in the renovation and everything in Philadelphia.
There's nothing but opportunity within the Reading terminal market. Our market continues to grow in popularity year after year, and that's due to a lot of great efforts on our staff's part, but also because of our great customers. So we're actually gearing up towards towards the end of the summer, but then leading into the fall, our actually busiest time of the year is that the month of November for Thanksgiving, which where the building will just be quite insane, to say the least, between produce and people that sell turkeys and everything else that's involved. So after that'll be our busiest time, but we're also very excited because our owners have purchased another business within the Reading terminal that's called the Beer Garden, which will be converted to an establishment called Maui Maloi's, which will be a full-service local brew pub, but also specializing on a million different kinds of food, all made with local ingredients. And the name has significance because Vinny and Jimmy's father was named Tony Iovine, but their mother was Irish, and her name was Maui Malloy. So the name is in honor of her.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. And you might even have pansy ice cubes there, so it'd be really exotic that way. It would be really nice. With any of these, had you had ever the rite of passage of eating an edible flower? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
no, absolutely. I consider myself fairly daring, where I love to try anything that's new. So anything that's going to have edible as part of its name, of course I'm going to try it. And I have found the petals of, especially carnations, to be a little bit sweeter. I actually found the orchids to be a little bit on the bitter side. But no, absolutely, I absolutely have tried them. And,
like with the orchids, when you say bitter, is it like bitter as being more alkaline, or just plain bitter, like having that bitter taste?
Bitter to me as if like dandelion greens.
Oh yes.
Like not an unenjoyable bitter.
Mhm. It's like a healthy bitter.
But a healthy bitter. So if you're the type of person that you have a sensitive palate and like bitter tasting to you is something that is unenjoyable, then you might want to research the flowers. Definitely stay towards the ones that are sweeter. If you're the type of person that does like diverse taste, then the flowers, even the ones that are labeled as bitter flowers, will still have an enjoyment factor for you.
Right, and with the bitter, sometimes it's just matching the right cheese, the right seasoning with it, the right oils, flavored oils, or even the right salad dressing with it. It brings it out. Like sometimes with some bitter greens, meaning like dandelions or even kale, it's not as bitter as dandelions or anything, but it's a little different. The thing is, sometimes you use a raspberry vinaigrette and put some other flowers in there, smaller flowers, and also some of the different fruits like raspberries or kiwi.
Absolutely.
Or even dragon fruit, or even your prickly pear. Diced up in that would be very good. It'd give it a different flavor. And people right away, they're now introducing, using meats like chicken, Caesar chicken and salmon or different beef and everything. But when you have the art of mixing like mushrooms, your greens and your edible flowers and your cheeses and different exotic salad dressings, it's a whole new salad out there, and it's a whole new meal. And you'll find that with edible flowers, audience, that you're filled. You're not as hungry. You get filled very fast. Did you notice that when you ate them, Butch?
Oh, I did, and I think sometimes when there's you mentioned about the combining of flavors, which I think is important because. I think the combinations of flavors is enough stimulus sometimes to fill you, because it's not all sweet or it's not all sour. Like that combination is very enjoyable, and at times you might have an edible flower and it may taste a little bitter to you, and then as you combine ingredients, as you try it a second time, you become accustomed to that taste, and you may even find yourself craving that taste as well, which is often the case with spicy foods. So absolutely.
Right, and I know with edible flowers, because they're so nutritious or so potent in what they have, meaning their natural dyes in them, and I'm going to call it the unknown compounds that may be in there. The thing is that, say you were chemical sensitive and you ate an edible flower, you may clean your body faster with an edible flower. So if you're going to do that, remember, take a little bite of the flower. You don't have to eat the whole flower that way, but it's these edible flowers are really for everybody, whether they have allergies or not. But if you do have allergies, because they're so potent, just take a little bit, and then you'll see that they really are more beneficial to your body in cleansing because of the high enzyme or the protein content in them. It helps speed up metabolism. Like, they did a beautiful study in West African mango that you ate like 50 milligrams of West African mango a day, you'd lose 23 to 28 pounds. And the thing is, it's because the enzymes in that fruit help clean up your metabolism, which gets sluggish because of pollution that could be in your body. And it's very beneficial, not only the fiber and other things, but it's very tasty, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah, any kind of mango.
For something to be good for you.
Yeah, that's it, and it's high in nutrition, and the nutrients that we necessarily are not getting in our produce or anything, because your company is so selective in what produce they represent and have on their shelves. It's a different story. But many of these produce, they are lacking different nutrients and different minerals because it's not in the soil. So the more organic, the more they use natural foliar absorbents, like we learned about AgriGrow, and all different kinds of products out there in a natural base. You end up getting more nutritious vegetables, fruits, and also berries, and now edible flowers. Because I predict there's going to be a great commodity of edible flowers, not only after this show, but as we pioneer into this area, because it is a whole untapped area that will only grow. It's like the mixture of pixie dust and butterfly wings and flowers. It's going to be quite an interesting year, I think, as we go into the end of the year, in reference to not, things that are changing in the world, but also edible flowers. Because I've noticed, I have a lot of sick patients, Butch, here, and what
Yes.
I've noticed that when I just introduced last month edible flowers, some simple recipes, I had some samples here in the office, and so whoever came in, they got to taste it that day or any of this thing. Their vitality and their vibration and their outlook on life, there was a shift, and that was very good, because we can always complain about unhappy days or anything like that, but when you can make that shift and get into a higher gear, it allows you to get well and share life and be happy. And that's what the whole thing is, because we all come and go, and we all have our alignment with our own star system, but we want to really enjoy life, not abuse life, but be happy in it. So like you and I, we enjoy food, so we like to taste it, enjoy it, and I have always loved history, math, and science, so I always like the history of how it got there and the tale, how do we know that Canepa seed, that Canepa bear, the Canepa was, brought with Roberto Confris and his pirates from the island of Puerto Rico outside of Mayaguez. Who knows what they ate? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
what a unique perspective.
Yeah, unique
and you really are, like, to simplify, like, you really are, like, that cliche saying, you are what you eat, is really such great advice. That I think you're right, that when you're eating nutritious, and like you said, really the closest you can get it from it just coming right out of the ground and you consuming it is really nutrient dense as possible. And the more healthy and nutritious fruits and vegetables you're eating, I think there is a mental shift that goes along with it. There's a chemical reaction that occurs, and it's hard to eat good tasting, nutritious food and be upset with that or carry like a negative feeling towards it. I think it is beneficial, and it's something that's often overlooked. We work very hard. And sometimes in the United States we put more emphasis on our work that we do than with our diet, and sometimes we we actually we starve ourselves of the nutrients that we need. And sometimes it's really just as simple as connecting with bright and vibrant foods to live a bright and vibrant life.
Right, and that's a very good point. Bright and vibrant, and so many of these. When you look, audience, at the list, we have it on the website, different link ups, but you look at the different types of species of these flowers that are edible and other exotic fruits, you'll see that they have in-depth colors, multiple colors, like the passion flower or any of that, meaning different purples, different yellows, different blues. These are very healing, and you'll find that the color of the plant, or the color of the flower, I should say, is basically what color you may need in your body for your chakras, or changing the energy patterns within your body, which is all done with light, sound, and cellular communication through the template of the DNA. And people will see that they will vibrate to whatever edible flower they like as they go to the marketplace. And we're coming up to the hour. We have about a few minutes left. Butch, do you have anything else you'd like to share with the audience in that area? And I thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, all I'd like to say is I'm sure you have a wonderful audience. It's been a pleasure to be able to talk to everyone. And the advice I would give is just to have fun with whatever you're eating, fruits and vegetable-wise. Definitely the edible flowers are a nutritious and colorful addition, but just remember that the more colorful the palette of food that you're eating, the healthier you'll be. And just for everyone to enjoy, and nothing but health, wealth, and happiness to your audience.
And I appreciate that, and thank you very, very much, Butch, for being our special guest on this hour. And I will, the next time I go to Philadelphia, I'll look y'all up, and I'll be there. Okay?
Absolutely.
We'll
anyone that knows as much about produce as you is definitely welcome here. You just might have to watch out we don't put you to work.
Listen, I'm ready to go to work. No problem.
Very cool. Thank you, Dr.
That's one thing. I'm not lazy. Okay.
I would never accuse you of that.
Yeah, I like experiencing different jobs and everything. So I feel right at home. No problem.
I think we'd have no problems finding a spot for you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be right on the Canepa Island, the dragon fruit.
You got it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care. And God bless, audience, and enjoy. And next week we're going to have nanotechnology and its unknown effects on the environment with my guest, Dr. Richard Young, and Agent Robert Tholander Jr. from IA. Thank you very much, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Informed, enlightened, alive and amplified. This is the Living Light Network.
From other parts of the world where we specialize in items that you wouldn't find at your normal markets, items such as dragon fruit or canepas and edible flowers does fall into that category of items that most likely you wouldn't find at your typical supermarket or even your typical farmer's market. So It really is a combination, and edible flowers is an item that we do carry.
And I tell you, like when you mentioned Canepa, our company, Integrative Health Systems, was the first to use Canepa in our Canary Island blend, which helps the throat so much. But Canepas are native in the Puerto Rican area, of Puerto Rico, and the Caribbean, and they're a wonderful fruit. And you just suck on that little seed and then spit it out. It's
absolutely
very good. It's like a Caribbean loquat. It's really good. And the other fruit that you mentioned, the dragon fruit, that is very hard to find, meaning I'm so glad you specialize in that, because you slice it, you can dry it, and it is so beneficial in nutrients for the body as compared to any of the others, because it's so compressed with vitamin C and other types of nutrients in it. And then any of these fruits or even these edible flowers, audience, it is so important to realize that you don't need, like on our first half, you don't need to eat a lot of them, but it makes it...
In in our case, in many cases, the edible flowers that are being bought just because how eye-striking and how beautiful they are. Yes, they're edible, so that they're safe to put on a plate. But we have many caterers that will come in, and our orchids that we sell are probably about the size of your index finger in length, and they're predominantly used for decoration on dishes that they make, and it's just an added bonus that they're edible and that they're safe. But the color is just what's so striking about them.
Right. They're drawn by the colors, and I personally, if you ever look at the center of an orchid, it looks just like a person bowing, in particular like a woman in a kimono, like a Chinese gate, bowing and having their hands open, like cupped. And right. It just, to me, looks so profound that way. It's like the reverence of that orchid in you. It's a flower that is you and the flower versus the other flowers out there don't have that. It's because it's like that flower is looking at you. So it's very interesting. And the thing with a lot of your produce, in particular, too, which I have a recipe which we call monkey juice, and then I made it into a product, and it's on the website, Special, the right of food and the right of the edible flower right, when you have
Absolutely.
them. Because they're so potent because of the dyes and the enzymes in it. Because people don't realize it needs more enzymes and more energy and more growth factor or more longevity of the cells to make a flower bloom than it is to make it grow, the plant, sometimes. So nature has really played an important role in the design of plants and also the flowers. And I know it was Nancy who interviewed you for our promo, Butch. You mentioned, which is one of the test questions if they want to win a prize from us on our new Botchimi nasturtium gel, is your number one selling edible flower is what, Butch?
I'd say our number one edible flower are orchids.
Yes. And
or
in particular, yeah, with that orchid, because when I see an orchid in my mind, or I've seen them, I have orchids in the office, and are they the little ones? Are they the big ones? What is being bought for food?
Right, and you touched on something which was very profound, which is just the immense intelligence of nature, where that the food that grows and the plants that grow have such healing capabilities. And terminal market. It's actually a pretty historic landmark in Philadelphia, and the market itself takes up one square block. It's a historic building that over 100 years ago was a train station that brought farmers from Lancaster and other parts of the country, or other parts of the state rather, to Philadelphia. It's no longer a train station, but it now does house over 80 unique merchants that are everything from produce purveyors to fishmongers to prepared foods. And yes, it's really a unique place.
And some of our audience will remember it as one of the little squares on the game Monopoly,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It's there. It really does exist. That game brought out a lot of historical places. And Philadelphia is so full of history, from Benjamin Franklin forward and our forefathers, et cetera. And I know your area of that terminal is a high tourist attraction. And in particular, with your business, which is the Iovine business of produce, in particular, you specialize in edible flowers along with other produce.
And we do. We actually have we try to market ourselves as a full service market, which means that throughout the year you'll be able to find an abundance of local produce, and you'll be able to find some of the more exotic produce.
Hello, audience. We're back for our second half of our show, which is on edible flowers, and now we're going to have our section on market to yum edible flowers we're having. My guest on this hour is Butch Dougherty. He's with Iovine Brothers.
You got it right.
I think of hi, Butch.
Hey, how are you?
I am fine, and thank you very much for being on the show. And audience, this is the first time Butch and I have a chance to talk, because when we were getting everything coordinated, we were tracking down everybody. So I appreciate it very much.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thanks for inviting us.
Yes, and when I see the spelling of the Iovine Brothers, Iovine, I think of iodine without the D in it. So that's how I have to stop and think about it. And audience, Butch is the operations manager for Iovine Brothers, which is nestled in a market of 3,000 square feet in the Reading railroad station in the Philadelphia area, correct?
It is. We operate a produce market within what's called the Reading